Carl, I'm just getting some information from sources of my own, and one source in particular, a senior administration official, says that President Trump and President Xi are highly unlikely to meet before March 1st. The two leaders could meet shortly thereafter that meeting, but that this meeting is highly unlikely to take place by March 1st. The reason why that timing is important is because China had been pushing to hold this meeting on the back of the Kim Jong-un summit that we now know to be February 27th and 28th. They wanted this meeting to happen before that deadline where tariffs are set to double on some $250 billion in Chinese goods. The question now is what happens on those to those tariffs on that date. The overriding feel within the administration, according to people in the administration as well as people who are being briefed by the White House, is that they will stay at 10% on March 1st. They are currently automatically set to double, but a presidential memorandum could hold them in place at 10% if the two parties feel that they are reaching a deal. There are a couple reasons why this meeting is now highly unlikely to take place by this March 1st deadline. The first is that there's just simply too much work to do on a deal between the U.S. and China. The second is that White House advisors are currently urging the president to limit the scope of this trip to Asia, to just focus on the relationship with North Korea and this push for denuclearization. And then finally, the optics of meeting in Southeast Asia or on Chinese soil, as China is currently pushing for, to announce this trade deal. There are still no details, no date, no location set for where a Trump-Xi meeting would take place, and all of that needs to be worked out. So certainly some important developments for those who are watching the trade situation, that President Trump and President Xi are highly unlikely to meet before March 1st. Carl?
We see the market responding a bit to this, Kayla, but should the lesson be here, or the reminder to investors be that even if a meeting does not take place by that time, it's not a given that tariffs will accelerate from there?
Correct. It is not a given. China is currently pushing to have all tariffs removed entirely as part of a deal. But if a deal is not reached by March 1st, the tariffs would not come off. But the U.S. could leave them in place at 10% and not escalate them as these negotiations continue. Important to note, though, yesterday Ambassador Lighthizer briefed some senators from the Senate Finance Committee on trade. They asked him about that deadline, and Senator Chuck Grassley, who chairs that committee, said that Lighthizer was not very definitive about exactly what will happen on March 1st. So we wait and see what happens. And as everything with this White House, the situation is fluid. When Ambassador Lighthizer and Secretary Mnuchin go to China next week, late next week, they could come back with a different recommendation for the president, and the situation could change. This information is as of this moment.
Secretary Mnuchin yesterday on CNBC seemed reluctant to telegraph the what ifs of what would happen. Would they hold back on this? And just a reminder here that in a lot of cases, the companies that have really felt the impact of these tariffs have already built in the impact of a rise in tariffs to 25%. So that would not come as a surprise to a lot of these international companies. Kayla, thank you for the great reporting. Appreciate that.